Right now, on the entire planet, there is exactly one species of human. That sounds normal. It isn't. It's one of the strangest facts about the world you live in, and it has almost never been true. Go back 300,000 years and walk east from Africa. You would meet people who were shorter than you, with heavier brows and wider chests. Keep going, and you'd meet people barely a meter tall, hunting elephants the size of ponies. Further east, on islands in the Philippines, people with curved finger bones built for climbing trees. And somewhere in the mountains of Central Asia, a group we can barely picture at all, because almost nothing of them survives except their DNA. At least 6 different kinds of human, possibly 9, all alive at the same time. All of them people. Today there is one, us. Every one of the others is gone, and the reason is not the one most people assume. Let's start with who was actually here, because the list is longer than you think. The Neanderthals are the ones everyone knows, and almost everything you've heard about them is wrong. They were not slow, and they were not stupid. Their brains were, on average, slightly larger than ours. They lived across Europe and Western Asia for more than 300,000 years, through ice ages that would have destroyed us. They made tools with multiple parts, fitted together. They produced adhesive from birch bark, which requires heating the bark to a precise temperature with almost no oxygen present, a process modern researchers had real difficulty reproducing. They buried their dead. They used pigment. They cared for injured people who could no longer contribute anything to the group. In a cave in southern France called Bruniquel, more than 300 meters from the entrance, someone broke off hundreds of stalagmites and arranged them into deliberate rings on the cave floor. There are traces of fire on them. That construction has been dated to roughly 176,000 years ago, which is long before our species arrived in Europe. Neanderthals did that, in total darkness, deep underground, for reasons we will never know. Then there are the Denisovans, and they're stranger still. For most of history, nobody knew they existed. In 2010, researchers sequenced DNA from a single fragment of fingerbone found in a Siberian cave and discovered it belonged to a population of humans nobody had ever identified. We still have almost no bones, a few teeth, a piece of skull, a jawbone from the Tibetan plateau. We know them mostly as a genetic signature, a ghost found in the code. On the Indonesian island of Flores lived Homo floresiensis. Adults stood around 1 meter and 10 centimeters tall, with brains roughly the size of a grapefruit. And yet, they made stone tools and hunted a species of dwarf elephant. They survived on that island until around 50,000 years ago, which means our species and these tiny people were alive on Earth at the same moment. There was Homo Luzonensis in the Philippines, only identified in 2019, with hand and foot bones that suggest it still climbed. There was Homo naledi in South Africa, with a brain about 1/3 the size of ours. Its remains were found deep inside a cave system, through a passage so narrow that the excavation team had to be specially recruited for their size. How dozens of bodies ended up in a chamber that difficult to reach is still argued about, but the simplest explanation is that other members of their species put them there. And there was Homo erectus, the great survivor, which lasted well over 1 million years, and may have still been alive in Java when our ancestors were painting caves. Earth was crowded. Being human was not unusual. Now the important part, because this is where nearly everyone gets it wrong, they did not disappear because they were inferior. We like to tell this story as a competition we won on merit. We were clever, they were primitive, and nature sorted it out. The evidence does not support that. Take the Neanderthals again. Larger brains, composite tools, fire, adhesives, burial, pigment, structures built deep underground, care for the sick and injured. Every single thing we usually point at and say, this is what made us human. They had some version of it. They also had bodies far better built for cold than ours. Broader chests, shorter limbs, denser muscle. On paper, in Ice Age Europe, they should have beaten us comfortably. So what did we actually have? The best answer researchers have found is not about individual intelligence at all. It's about connection. When you excavate a Neanderthal site and trace where their stone came from, the material is almost always local. Most of it traveled less than 50 kilometers. Their world was their valley, and the valleys next to it. When you excavate a modern human site from the same period, you find obsidian and seashells that traveled hundreds of kilometers inland, ostrich eggshell beads moving across enormous distances, in patterns that look like gifts passed between groups. That material did not walk there. It moved through people, through trade, and through relationships between groups who were not related to one another. That difference matters far more than it sounds. Imagine somebody in a group of 30 works out a better way to make a needle. If that group is isolated, the idea lives exactly as long as the person who knows it. One bad winter, one accident, and it's gone. It has to be invented again from nothing, by somebody else, generations later. Now imagine that same person belongs to a network of 500 people, spread across many camps, who meet, trade, and marry. The idea spreads within a season. It survives the winter, because 30 people now know it. Somebody improves it. Somebody else improves it again. We were not smarter as individuals. We were plugged into more people. And across tens of thousands of years that compounds into an overwhelming advantage, not in any single generation, but over hundreds of them. There's a second factor, and it's simple arithmetic. Estimates suggest that across the whole of Europe, the total Neanderthal population may never have risen above a few tens of thousands, scattered in small, isolated pockets. Ours was larger and growing. Small populations are fragile. A run of bad luck that a large population simply absorbs can erase a small one completely. Add in a period of violent climate swings, where forests turn to open steppe and back again within a few generations, and small isolated groups start disappearing one at a time, not because anything dramatic happened to them, but because there was never quite enough slack. And then there's the part that changes how this whole story feels. They didn't all die. In 2018, researchers analyzed a bone fragment from that same Siberian cave. It belonged to a girl who died around 90,000 years ago, aged about 13. Her genome showed something nobody expected to ever find. Her mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan. She was a first-generation child of two different human species, not a distant echo of interbreeding thousands of years earlier, the direct daughter of one of each. And the fact that we found her in the very first handful of genomes we sequenced suggests this was not rare. These groups met repeatedly, and often enough that some of it is still in you. If your ancestry is from outside Africa, you are carrying roughly 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA right now. If you have Melanesian or Papuan ancestry, you may carry 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. That isn't a fossil in a museum. That's inside your cells. And some of it is doing real work. There is a gene variant called EPAS1 that helps the body cope with very low oxygen at extreme altitude. It's common in Tibetan populations, and it did not come from us. It came from Denisovans. A species that vanished tens of thousands of years ago is still helping human beings breathe on the roof of the world. So the picture is not a war with a winner. There was no single battle, no massacre, no moment where it was decided. What the evidence points to is far slower and much less dramatic. Small, isolated groups with slightly lower birth rates, meeting larger and better connected groups across thousands of years. Some were absorbed into us. Some simply faded out. Nobody chose anything. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. We did not win. We were not selected for greatness. As far as anyone can honestly tell, we are the ones who happen to be slightly more numerous and slightly more connected at a moment when those two things mattered, and everyone else ran out of room. And now we're alone. For 300,000 years, being human meant you could look across a valley and see someone who was almost you, but not quite. A different kind of mind. Another way of being a person. Somebody to measure yourself against. That's gone. Every other creature on this planet that could look back at us and wonder what we were thinking is extinct. We're the only ones left in a conversation that used to have 6 voices in it, and the only place any of them still exist is written, invisibly, in about 2% of you.